today we're going to be talking about #Spawn, the sponsored content epidemic. Really kind of talking about some of the rules and regulations that the FTC has put into place that is kind of, set certain ground rules for how you talk about brands through your personal channels. But before we do that, Caroline, Love and Loathing LA, tell us all about it.
Hello. Yes, I am Caroline. I have a lifestyle blog about Los Angeles called Love and Loathing LA. And I touch on everything from food, fashion, fun, everything in the Los Angeles space.
Awesome. And Alex?
Hello. I'm Alex Michael May, and I'm an Instagrammer and a YouTuber. I focus on body positivity and finding your own unique sense of style and just having fun with it.
So I would say it was a couple years ago that the FTC kind of introduced these new regulations to the kinds of content. Obviously, it spawned from the rise of the blogger and this new medium, really, for advertising, native advertising. And I kind of remember when this all took place, and it kind of shook up the influencer and the blogger community, because you're kind of like, whoa, what do I have to do? And how much trouble am I going to get into? And when do I tell that, my audience that it's sponsored, and when don't I? And, it's kind of been a little bit of gray area. How do you guys read the rules and regulations for your own platforms? Like, how do you kind of understand it? How do you regulate it when you're looking at your own content?
It's something that I'm still trying to figure out and navigate through myself. But it's the brands that I work with that have, especially the larger brands, it's become a thing that you absolutely have to. You have to, disclose the fact that you are getting paid, even though that any and all opinions are my own. And I'm very specific about who I work with and what I want to work on and what I want to put out there into the world.
Yeah, so with YouTube, it's really interesting because I think when it first started, these partnerships started coming about, people would kind of bury it in their description or say it, but the FTC guidelines state that it's really important that you disclose it in a way that people can see. So there aren't actual technical rules like 3/4 the way down or above the fold, you need to place this. You really do have to rely on your own judgment, but you really need to make sure that as a viewer, would it be clear and perfectly conspicuous to you that either this person was compensated through items or, money. You have to be really clear about it. And so it is a little bit fuzzy because sometimes people like black and white, hard and fast rules, but this really isn't one of those. But it is really reliant on common sense, which is interesting, but
totally,
it's also kind of easy because it's like, as a viewer, would I understand that this was sponsored or that I received this, in trade? That's really just the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side of that too, something that is interesting and probably quite challenging for you guys is, how do you keep your audience feeling like it's a really authentic environment? And not to say that paid partnerships, I mean, this is a living, this is your living, but how do you kind of approach balancing #sponsored content versus the things that are truly, your own, especially when, if you read what these guidelines are, it technically says that anytime you're talking about a product with any sort of endorsement, even if it's just you liking it, there is some level of disclosure there. So how do you guys, what's your balance on like the amount of sponsored content versus organic content?
I personally try to actively seek out brands that I genuinely want to work with to begin with. I turn down things constantly because if I don't feel like my brand lines up, it's not going to work. It's not going to translate. When you hit that special, spot where you find a brand that you really believe in and that you enjoy, and they want to, lift you up as much as you want to lift them up, that's when it really, I feel like it works. But brand bombardment has a really negative effect, and I think it goes the same thing with sponsored content. It can have adversary effects, and it's hard to kind of speak to brands sometimes to be like, less is more. We have to be, we have to do this in a really strategic manner, and so it's tricky, but it's like you said, it's a balance. You just have to find the right situation.
Totally. Even sitting on the side of the coin of representing the brand, not all of the brands that we work with feel, and well, I should say have legal teams that are so adamant about putting those things in the posts. I have worked with really big brands who are like, there is no way that it can't have that in there. And I've worked with a lot of other brands who don't even think about it. Right? Because they don't have the legal teams down their back. How do you approach that personally? Do you tell them like, hey, I'm going to include this? Because there is a level of, even for the brand, it's like, oh, now people know it's an ad, and it's not like Caroline was super into it natively or organically.
And it has an effect.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it could be literally a brand that I worship, and if it says sponsored, it does not do as well.
It performs less.
Yeah, it does, and it's unfortunate. So it's kind of that catch-22 that I find myself in, that gray area, because I do work with a lot of smaller brands as well that, you know, that's just not something that they state. Like I did a giveaway recently with with a cookie brand, and it was just not something that they mentioned. It didn't matter, and it's just one of those weird gray area things where you're like, what do I do? How do I? You know, of course, this is great because on one coin, it's a giveaway. It's something that I'm doing for my, you know, my followers, and that's great. I have something to share with them. But on the other coin, it's just like, how do I disclose this properly? Because it's a giveaway. It's, again, so much gray area.
Especially when you know that post is potentially going to perform less, and the last thing you want is to like dip your engagement at any point.
And you don't want to disappoint the brand, and you don't want to disappoint your followers, because it's like, it gets tricky.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
It really is hard, and that's why I encourage a lot of the brands that I work with to not necessarily, I love it when they do campaigns seasonally or for a launch of an item. That makes a lot of sense. But I really think that it makes sense to figure out what works for every influence they're working with so that it feels unique and tailored to them. I suggest to influencers, like, how would you tell this to your friend? You would say, oh my gosh, they sent over this amazing package. It was beautiful.
Right.
I was so excited to receive it. It's very clear that you got it for free, but you know, it doesn't taint like your view of it, and it's your real opinion. So it's making sure that you're sharing that in your real voice, that you are clear about the fact that it was sent to you for free, or, you know, this brand has been generous enough to provide me with the free samples, and now I'm going to share the same thing with you. Right. I think being as clear as possible in the terms that your audience understands and can relate to, and as long as you're being authentic to yourself, and you're asking yourself, like, if I were reading this, how would I feel? I feel like you can really feel it. It's like a gut reaction. It's like, ooh, this feels so salesy or wrong. Or when you lead with, you know, ad, this is an ad, or like, you know, I feel like it's just, you have to kind of like listen to your intuition on that. And I know that's strange for something that is so technical, but it really is, I think, the best way to navigate it.
Super in tune and super, you know, wanting to put out the right type of content and have it be meaningful. Like, it's not all about money for me. I don't think it is for Alex either, obviously.
Yeah.
It really is just trying to share the right things at the right time. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
I think it really all boils down to your compass, your brand's driving mission, and essentially your why. So everything should really, you know, ruminate out from that. So for me, I believe everything is really body positive and this and that. But because of that, then I tend to really appreciate brands that work ethically and treat their employees well, and it kind of really just creates a ripple effect there. And so I think when you're being authentic to your why, either as a brand, so as a brand, you know, if you believe in certain things, seeking out influencers that believe in those things and really emanate those brand values, the same as being an influencer, like, you love food so much and you have this deep love relationship with Los Angeles and all the things that means, and I believe in body positivity. So for me, I feel like everything can kind of be approached from that standpoint, that your brand premise and your why and your mission kind of ekes out into everything that you do. And so I think that that's a creative way around it, is your unique perspective is no one else's perspective. And so as long as you approach it with your perspective creatively, like I said, the way you would talk to a friend about it, then it's going to feel authentic to you.